I don't know if I've ever been so confident that a new game was going to hit than I was in the lead up to Resident Evil Requiem's release. Usually when a new game is coming out that I'm very excited for, there's always a little bit of doubt, worry, or skepticism in the back of my mind that it's going to disappoint me. I guess I couldn't help but subconsciously develop that after being burned quite a few times in the past. But with this game, there was none of that. I felt strangely at ease. Resident Evil is one of, if not the most consistent modern AAA franchise right now. The quality and frequency of which they deliver these games is almost unlike any other. And knowing it was being developed by the Resident Evil 7 team further solidified my confidence. That game has a very special place in my heart as the one that got me into the franchise and really survival horror as a whole. So I was already excited from the moment the game was revealed, but when they officially unveiled Leon as the game's other protagonist, my hype surged from a 10 to a 10,000. I think like most people heading into the game, I was most looking forward to playing as Leon in the latest we've seen him in the Resident Evil timeline, and returning to Raccoon City to hopefully bring his character arc full circle. Especially after all the new groundwork they laid down in the recent remakes. I really love how consistent and congruent his character feels now. Even though he's aged quite a bit, you can very clearly see his trajectory from young, naive, bright-eyed rookie cop to jaded, grizzled, one-lining veteran. I think Nick Apostolidis does a phenomenal job reflecting the character's journey vocally through these 3 games, and having that consistent voice as a through line really helps in making them feel further connected. Again, all of this to say, I was most looking forward to playing as Leon and seeing his story unfold. And don't get me wrong, I still loved the game because of Leon. I was bouncing in my seat and giggling like a child with every one-liner or chance to wield a chainsaw, and completely lost my mind seeing him drive up that skyscraper on a motorcycle. This game understands its audience so well, it made me feel like a kid again. It really didn't have to do anything to sell people on playing as an older Leon. He's one of the most iconic characters in gaming. We were already bought in from the previous games. The other protagonist, Grace, however, was a big unknown. This series has had so many iconic legacy characters that it's hard for a newcomer to enter the fray and immediately become a fan favorite, but that's kind of what Grace was able to pull off. I wasn't expecting to resonate with her character as much as I did. It was a very pleasant surprise. I think she's the best new protagonist the series has had in a while, and keep in mind, this comes from someone who actually liked Ethan. She's very, very different from the typical Resident Evil protagonist, really quite different from most video game protagonists, feeling real and authentic in a way that was pretty refreshing, and Angela Santabano absolutely crushes the performance. She's already been getting her very well-earned praise, and barring any mind-blowing performances over the rest of the year, she has to be the early favorite to win Best Performance at the Game Awards. If she doesn't at least get nominated, that will be a crime. I honestly believe Requiem is one of the best dual protagonist games I've played. And I don't mean like some of the other Resident Evil games where there's 2 protagonists that you play as in separate playthroughs, but a game where you're constantly switching back and forth between 2 different perspectives throughout. That's really hard to balance, and I think a lot of games struggle with that. It can create issues in the game's pacing, sometimes one character may feel sidelined in favor of the other, and the characters typically need to play differently, but each be fun to play for different reasons. I don't think Requiem nails it perfectly, but it's just about as good as I've seen, and really impressive that it works as well as it does. And while many people are talking about Leon, his arc, and many incredible one-liners, rightfully so, I felt compelled to make a video focusing on Grace and why I believe she's a great survival horror protagonist. Okay, I want to start this off with a quick little exercise. I want you to imagine you've been kidnapped, bear with me. You've been kidnapped and you're trapped in an area with a bunch of terrifying monsters. But there's one other person there with you. What is the ideal type of person to be stuck with to get you out of that situation? You'd probably want someone who's physically and mentally strong, someone brave and level-headed who's not gonna crack under the immense pressure and stress of the situation, someone who can make calm, logical decisions. Good communication skills and some combat experience probably wouldn't hurt either. You'd probably want someone like Leon. Just ask Ashley. Or really, almost any of the other Resident Evil protagonists for that matter. What you probably don't want is a relatively small, socially anxious introvert who has panic attacks in moments of extreme distress, and while had some basic training, has zero field experience. To be fair to Grace though, I basically described Emily's situation and she almost gets her out of that. But the point is, if you could choose out of any of the Resident Evil protagonists to get you out of a pinch, Grace isn't going to be your first choice. She's more likely to be your last. She's not the ideal personality type for the nightmare situation she's put in, and that's precisely what makes her such a compelling person to play as in a survival horror game. It's becoming a little bit of a trend with first Ethan and now Grace, that these new RE protagonists are pretty normal, everyday people. Well, they're not exactly normal, but you know what I mean. They're not cops, soldiers, or counter-bioterrorism agents. Ethan was just a plain normal dude looking for his missing wife in Louisiana, and Grace, while she does work for the FBI, she's an intelligence analyst, not a field agent. The nightmare she has to endure would already be way over the head of a lone FBI agent, nonetheless a desk jockey. A very traumatized desk jockey at that. Grace is genuinely terrified throughout most of this game. There's a vulnerability and humanity to her that I think makes her very relatable and easy to latch onto. You can feel her terror. This game does a really good job of aligning the player's feelings and emotions with the character you're playing as. As Grace, we feel extremely tense, vulnerable, and fragile. In the beginning, at the care center specifically, you feel more incentivized to sneak around and hide than fight. That's doubly true on Insanity. You really have to scrounge and smartly maneuver around initially to survive. Every enemy feels like a genuine obstacle. And I love some of the small gameplay details they included to portray Grace's fear and inexperience. Like how she hurts her hand when first firing the Requiem, or how shaky they are while aiming at the beginning without any stabilizers. The panicked ambient breathing as you wander around the care center low-key stressed me out. Even the stumbling in third person contributes to feeling like this overwhelmed, disempowered, scared human being. Meanwhile, as Leon, they do a tremendous job of shifting the power dynamic and making you feel like this confident, unfazed badass with a wealth of experience, giving you a wide arsenal of weapons including an axe with the occasional chainsaw, and a plethora of uniquely brutally satisfying animations. Even Leon's reload animations have aura. There's a constant give and take of power. Their gameplay and personalities contrast, yet complement each other really well. It's one of the main reasons I think this is one of the best dual protagonist games I've played. We learn a lot of what we need to know about the kind of person Grace is very early on. Just from the opening scenes, you can infer quite a lot about her. She's characterized as timid and introverted, a bit socially awkward, she has a stutter, speaks very quickly, and doesn't really look people in the eyes when talking to them. She typically looks around them or at the ground. Her personality makes a lot of sense when you consider her upbringing and trauma. Being the daughter of a freelance investigative journalist meant she was constantly on the move and never had the chance to form any lasting social connections. The one person she's shown to be comfortable with, her mother, was brutally murdered right in front of her. So, as one would expect, she further retreated into her shell. Her stutter developed from the severe emotional trauma of that event. I've seen some people complain about the stutter, but I think it's perfectly befitting of her character. It's representative of her emotional state and the trauma she suffered. After her mother's death, she eventually joined the FBI, a career she probably pursued because of the nature of her mother's murder, threw herself into her work, and became a complete shut-in, going to work and home, and that's it. In the background check Gideon had on Grace that can be found in the second floor office of the care center, it states she often worked until after midnight and spent all of her free time at home near the FBI offices. Ironically enough, this reclusive behavior actually kept her safe from Victor Gideon for a while. It made it difficult to establish contact and kidnap her. It's not like she had any friends or people she hung out with outside of work to use as leverage either, meaning the only way he could make contact without arousing suspicion was to lure her somewhere through her job. So again, probably not the ideal personality type to be in the situation she's in, but Grace does have some qualities that serve her in this scenario. For one, she's shown to be quite intelligent and resourceful. While it's clear her expertise lies in technology and analysis, there are numerous examples of her being able to think quickly or use her environment to get out of some sticky situations many people would probably die or be caught in, like killing the cop zombie with broken glass from a window, using the container that was collecting her blood to cut herself free from her restraints and break out of that table in the care center, pushing the door open to deceive Victor into thinking she ran out of the room and then hiding in that same room is honestly one of the smartest things I've seen a horror character do in a while. I think most people would be so scared of being chased by like a 9-foot monster, in the heat of the moment there wouldn't even be any thoughts going through their head, they'd just be running, fight or flight. And near the end of the game, she makes several crucial plans and decisions that not only save Leon, but likely many people who would have died from Victor or Zeno's schemes. First, in using her own life as leverage to force Zeno into sparing Leon, then putting together that Elpis was an antiviral, releasing it, and letting Zeno inject himself with it. Pretty impressive, and she accomplishes all of this while keeping all of her limbs intact as well, which is more than what could be said for Ethan. However, I think her most admirable quality is her courage. The definition of courage is the ability to do something that frightens one. Grace personifies that definition. She is consistently frightened and anxious throughout the entire game, but time and time again she's able to overcome that fear and push on. Courage is found in the presence of fear, not the absence of it. Leon is obviously courageous too, but he has so much experience at this point, most of this game is just another Tuesday to him. This is his life, it's who he is. When Grace asks him why he's doing all of this, risking his life, the question feels rhetorical to the audience. Because he's Leon. Sure, Raccoon City has special meaning to him and is the source of his trauma, but he'd be doing this anywhere else because that's the kind of person he is, someone who values human lives. For Grace, this is her first time going through the Resident Evil gauntlet. She didn't sign up for this, she's consumed with fear, which is what makes her constant decision to push on and take action, especially when she has the opportunity to walk away, all the more commendable. In the Wrenwood Hotel, she quickly realizes she needs to leave after seeing all the creepy stalker photos of her, but despite being terrified, decides to stay and get whatever her mom hid behind the painting. Actually, even being willing to go to the hotel to begin with is rather courageous. I'd be like, no sir, send literally anyone else. She puts herself in immediate danger to hold off zombies while Emily solves the Braille puzzle, and then when Emily is shortly after taken by the girl, she pursues them into the basement. Now, you could argue she has to do that anyway if she wants to escape, since Emily has the quartz she needs to get out of the care center, but it's made clear through her dialogue that she's going after this thing to save Emily. She'd be doing it regardless of if she had the quartz or not. And Grace could still have easily let her fear overtake her and just hide or try to find another way out of the care center. A lot of people, when they're afraid, just freeze. Deciding to descend into this dark abyss to pursue this abomination in a basement filled with abominations certainly takes some guts. And she makes another very similar courageous choice later on by locking Emily in a safe room and going on the offensive to take down the girl by herself. Grace doesn't have too many moments of empowerment in this game, but seeing her become emboldened and finally kill this thing after being terrorized by it through the whole game to this point feels very cathartic.
We're getting out of here. Get out of the fucking way.
Her courage is what actually helps save the day in the end as well. After her and Leon are able to escape from Zeno, she has the opportunity to jump ship. Overwhelming adversity is staring her down in the form of lickers, zombies, and an aura-farming Wesker clone. She's still afraid, but makes the choice to see this thing through with Leon. And it's a good thing too, because she ends up releasing Elpis and saving his life. Who knows if Leon even manages to get through the door to Zeno by himself, nonetheless somehow getting past him and destroying Elpis, where he would still inevitably succumb to his infection afterwards. I think like many people, courage comes more naturally to Grace when it's in the service of others, especially when it means protecting someone she cares about, as most of the examples I mentioned involve Leon or Emily. Requiem's narrative is about facing your past and dealing with trauma. Those are the themes that lie at the core of Grace and Leon's character arcs. Both have survivor's guilt, Leon for what happened in Raccoon City, and Grace for what happened to her mother. When we're introduced to Grace, it's been about 8 years since that traumatic night, and it still has a hold on her, as I think it would for many people. First of all, I have to say, Alyssa's death is one of the best acted scenes I've seen in Resident Evil. Grace's reaction is so raw and visceral, her initial shock and denial quickly transforming into desperation as she screams trying to wake up her dead mother. I've played this game multiple times at this point, and it still gives me chills. I think it's one of the most realistic reactions to a death I've seen in a video game. And it's not just the heightened, extremely emotional moments that Angela Santabano nails either, it's the subtler actions too. It's so hard to believe this is her first role in a video game because she's great with the motion capture, bringing out these subtle choices in Grace's body language, like how she tenses up and avoids eye contact when speaking with people she doesn't know, or the panicked delivery of her lines in some scenes where you can really see she's physically struggling to get the words out.
Leon Kennedy, DSO.
DSO. I'm Grace, Ashcroft, FBI.
FBI. What are you doing here?
Someone kidnapped me.
Resident Evil has a lot of these campy B-horror movie performances, and I love them. It's part of what makes some of the games so fun, but Grace's performance felt real and nuanced in a way that isn't the norm for Resident Evil, and I found that to be a breath of fresh air. The performance for Victor Gideon is fantastic too, I have to mention that. And we still get some of that incredible Resident Evil campiness from Leon's side. I saw someone say it's like Grace and Leon exist in different universes, and that feels so true, but it weirdly works, and it's crazy to me that it works as well as it does. The inciting incident and catalyst for Grace's development is when she meets Emily. This relationship is core to her growth and overall arc. While Grace is initially a bit weary and cautious around Emily, a mysterious girl locked in a cell with a dead guy right outside, who in his final moments warned Grace to stay away from her, is definitely cause for some suspicion, especially knowing the types of experiments Gideon probably ran on this little girl. But the plot engineers a reason to bring them together with this braille puzzle, and they quickly establish a bond. Grace becomes very protective of Emily. She's not only a little girl, but blind, so she's completely reliant on Grace to survive. Emily is the first connection Grace has made since her mother's death. She desperately wants to save and protect Emily in the way she couldn't for her mother, so for history to repeat itself and end in almost the exact same way is so tragic. Grace frantically trying to revive Emily with CPR, thinking for a brief moment she has, just for Emily to turn while Grace is powerless to stop it, is heartbreaking. Again, the performance is what really sells and elevates the moment, and you can understand the perspective of both protagonists. Leon knows all too well at this point that Emily is gone. He's witnessed this happen countless times, but Grace isn't accustomed to losing someone to an infection like this. She has to hold on to some type of hope that there's a way to reverse the effects. Afterwards, her distress and guilt reaches a breaking point. She says it's all her fault again. Leon understands, perhaps better than anyone. His survivor's guilt from what happened in Raccoon City has been a focal point of his story in the remakes and this game. But he had to keep moving forward and surviving. That's what he tries to communicate to Grace here, but it's just too much for her in the heat of the moment. All of this adds another layer of tragedy to the game's bad ending. It's obviously a soul-crushing end for Leon. "At least I could save you" is such a devastatingly haunting final line knowing everything he's been through, but it's also very tragic for Grace, who yet again makes another connection for it to end the same way it did for Emily and her mother, with that person dying right in front of her as she's powerless to save them. How does a person ever recover from that happening 3 times? And in that ending, they of course don't get the antiviral that's used to save Emily. Oh, and let's not forget about Sherry. It's just an incredibly bleak outcome for everyone involved. Thankfully, Capcom decided not to make everyone's depression worse by making this canon, though I do respect the decision to have such a bold, non-canonical ending. Backing up a bit though, when Grace makes that aforementioned courageous choice to help Leon put a stop to whatever Zeno is planning with Elpis, she views it as her shot at redemption. She couldn't save her mother or Emily, but maybe she can help put a stop to Zeno and save countless lives in the process. Leon, understandably, doesn't want her to come with. It was a challenge in itself getting her away from Zeno, and in his condition, he knows his odds of being able to protect her aren't great. But Grace hits him with some rather specific words that strike a chord.
I'm going back. I'm gonna destroy Elvis.
I'm coming with you.
No, you're not.
I don't want any more regrets. Whatever it takes, count me in.
Whatever it takes to save this city. Count me in.
If anything happens to me, you promise you'll end this.
I'd like to think Leon sees a bit of his younger self in Grace here, and that's why he agrees to let her come with. When I first started playing Requiem, I thought Grace's character arc was going to be the typical scared character goes through a bunch of trials and tribulations, and by the end will be this totally transformed, fearless warrior. And I'm actually really glad that's not what happened. Grace's development is far more subtle and realistic. Requiem takes place over a span of about 2 days. That's not enough time to completely transform a person, and things like fear and anxiety don't just magically disappear. Overcoming fear doesn't mean you've eradicated it permanently, it means you didn't let it stop you from doing what you set out to do. Sure, you can minimize its effects and hold over time, but it doesn't just go away, especially over the course of 48 hours. Grace is still afraid at the end. I'd certainly say less so than she was at the beginning, but she's still a normal flesh and blood human facing down monsters. She hasn't become immune to fear, her stutter isn't gone, but she's become determined with a clear purpose. She's not just trying to survive anymore, but make a real difference.
This is finally my chance to do something.
And she does. By releasing Elpis, she saves Leon, Sherry, who knows how many others, and inadvertently Emily. Now, I don't love the whole "I didn't shoot any of her vitals" cliche. It feels like a moment where the writers were maybe trying to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted the emotional impact and raising of the stakes from killing Emily off without actually killing her off. I completely understand why they did it, but it does feel a little cheap. There might have been a better way to go about that. But by having Emily survive, it does create this very satisfying closure to Grace's character arc. She gets to be to Emily what Alyssa was to her. It's a healing, full circle moment for her character. She started the game absorbed in her work and the trauma that had a hold on her, to ending it absorbed in a happy phone call with Leon about Emily. As much as all of this was a nightmare for Grace, she grows, learns the truth about her past, overcomes her fears, and comes out the other side a much healthier and fulfilled person. Plus, she got a free daughter in the process. Not a bad deal. Thanks, Victor. Although the audacity of her boss to ask for the report after sending her to Renwood alone is insane to me. You'd better be groveling just to get me to come back to work for you. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed Grace's story. I came to the game for Leon and ended up loving it because of both of them. There's a good chance that Grace may join the long list of Resident Evil's one-off characters, with Requiem potentially being her first and last appearance. But unlike a lot of those characters, I'm actually okay with that for Grace, because she had a complete, satisfying character arc. I don't really think she'd decide to become a field agent and willingly put herself in another situation like this one. I think she's probably content to just live out a relatively peaceful life with her new daughter. Now, maybe we'll see her again in a DLC or supporting role in a future title. Seeing her in a Sherry or Hunnigan type of role would make a lot of sense, somewhere where she can use her analytical expertise. Either way, I'm satisfied with where her story ended up. As for Leon, till you're 90, bud. Capcom ain't letting you go, not with how you help sell these games. Thank you guys for watching, I hope you enjoyed. Depending on how this video is received, I might make some other videos on Requiem. I have a few other ideas and thoughts rattling around in my head. It's been a long time since I've made a Resident Evil video, but I love this franchise to death. It's so quickly become one of my all-time favorites. Anyways, if you did enjoy, I'd always appreciate it if you left a like and considered subscribing, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Oh, and don't let your boss send you to any suspicious, personally traumatic places. That might be the real moral of the story.
Fighting the darkness